Hello, everyone. Thank you in advance for joining this presentation. Today, me and my friends, Purely, Rosalia, and also Wiwi, will be presenting a research study conducted by Novita Kusumaningtyas from Stockholm. And the focus of this research is on code switching, which refer to the practice of alternating between two or more languages during communication. Specifically, the study looks at how students in an English class switch between English and Indonesian during classroom discussions, and what types of switching they use, and also the reasons behind it. And let's explore how bilingual learners naturally navigate between languages and what this tells us about language use in the classroom. Next, introduction. First, we have these 4 points, and the first one is Indonesia is a bilingual and multicultural country. And the second one, code switching is a natural feature of bilingual communication. The third one, in English classrooms, it's often used when students struggle with vocabulary. And the fourth one, this study investigates how code switching supports learning and interaction. Okay, so Indonesia is well known for its cultural and linguistic diversity, with many individuals growing up speaking more than one language. As a result, code switching has become a normal part of how people communicate, and especially when speaking with others who share the same language background. And in classrooms, where English is taught or being taught as a foreign language, students often switch to Indonesian when they are being unsure of the English vocabulary that they use or even the grammar. But interestingly, it's not always because they are struggling. Sometimes they switch intentionally to emphasize a point or to clarify their meaning or to relate better to their classmates. And this study is important because it looks at code switching not as a mistake but as a meaningful and functional communication strategy. Next,
Methodology. Participate 12 student, English 3 class, 5 semester, non-English major, data collection method, classroom observation, interview with student, audio recording of discussion activities, analysis based on grammatical categories, public in 2019-18, and contextual reason compared in 2018 too. The researchers select 12 students from a fifth semester English 3 class at STAOM using random samplings. The students were not majoring in English, which made them more likely to rely on their first language in class. Data was collected through multiple techniques: classroom observation, student interviews, and audio recording of classroom discussion, especially during presentation. After transcribing the student enters the researcher categories each instance of code switching using two models. One model by Poplack focus on where the switch happened in a sentence, while the other by Goopers look at the reason or context behind the switch. Next.
So everyone can see the result on the PPT. The findings revealed that intra-sentential switching, where students switch language within a single sentence, was the most frequent type of code switching. This shows how naturally students blend English and Indonesian in mid-sentence, often to fill in a word or phrase. On the other hand, situational switching was the most common in terms of context. This means students change language based on who they were talking to or the setting, such as when a lecturer or classmate entered the conversation. These patterns suggest that students are quite flexible in choosing when and how to switch language depending on what feels most effective at the moment. When looking at why students switch language, the most common reason was to provide emphasis. In other words, they switch language to highlight or stress a particular idea. The second most common function was clarification, where students steered to make sure their message was clearly understood. Repetition also played a big role, as students often repeat a phrase in Indonesian after saying it in English to reinforce the message. These functions show that code switching is not just accidental, it's purposeful and serves communication goals like avoiding misunderstanding, maintaining flow, and building audience connection. Next.
From the result, we can see that most code switching occurred during presentations where students had to explain concept in English. Instead of seeing code switching as a limitation, the study frames it as a tool for better communication. The fact that intrasentential switching was the most frequent indicates that students are comfortable blending both languages fluently. In many cases, switches happen not because they lack vocabulary, but because they want to be understood, emphasize a point, or maintain engagement. This aligns with recent views in bilingual educations that treat code switching as a strategy rather than a failure. Next, in conclusions, this research highlights how code switching is an inevitable and beneficially aspects of language used in bilingual classrooms. Rather than viewing it as a problem, we can see it as a strategy students use to make their ideas clear, reinforce key points, or support their peers. The most common reasons for switching emphasis and clarification reflect a desire for effective communications. For teachers, this means we should not necessarily discourage switching, especially when it's done thoughtfully. Instead, it can be used to scaffold learning, reduce anxiety, and building confidence as students work toward full English fluency.
That is all from us. I hope this presentation of research study by Novita Kusumani has been helpful for everyone. Thank you and good evening. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.